It's inevitable. If we're in a role where email is a central part of the job, we're going to get emails that agitate us, irritate us, upset us, probably several times a year. But the key is not to respond in an emotionally charged way. Whether it's someone that didn't read our email before responding, or whether it's someone who's just generally rude, we want to make sure that we respond carefully and that we take the appropriate steps not to make the situation worse for ourselves. I'm Matt, and I'm here to talk to you about how to respond to those emails that drive you crazy. If you find this video helpful, please like it and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. So the first thing you're going to do when you receive an email like this is you're going to step away from the keyboard. You're going to put that phone down. You're not going to type a word until you've had a chance to carefully think about your response. An immediate emotional response is natural, even evolutionary. The fight or flight response is something our ancestors relied on to survive. However, answering an email from your boss, you probably don't want to approach that in the same way that our ancestors did when they came face to face with a beast. If the email does demand an immediate response, consider utilizing phrases like, "I confirm receipt of your email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can," or, "In the spirit of getting you the information you need as quickly as possible, here it is. However, I have some concerns and I will follow up with you on them later." Once you've had a chance to de-escalate your emotional state and you've freed up some mental resources to really think about this email, reread it again. You may read it with a complete new interpretation. You may see that you were inferring meaning that wasn't actually there. Now, if you reread the email and you continue to feel as though there is an issue, I'd still ask yourself some questions before you start typing. The first is, do you generally have a good relationship with the sender? Does this person usually speak to you this way? Are they usually rude, or are they usually more professional? If so, it's possible they're just having a bad day and you should consider giving them the benefit of the doubt and just moving on. Another question you can ask is, are you looking at it through a very specific lens? Is it the lens that the other party intended? Could it be interpreted in a different way? And if so, is it as bad as you initially thought it was? Could the email response be coming as a misinterpretation of an email that you sent originally? You should consider going back to read your email and see if the person misinterpreted what you said. It's possible that you just need to clarify a misunderstanding. Another question would be, does it matter if they were rude to you? How will this impact your work going forward? Do you have an ongoing relationship with them? Is this a department or a party you have to deal with regularly? If not, consider just moving on. It's better to use your limited mental and emotional resources in the workplace on something that actually matters. Another thing would be, is the sender of the email a very busy person? Are they dealing with a lot of other competing demands? Ever since the first BlackBerry rolled out, people have been firing off emails quickly from their phones without really thinking about it. And it's possible that this person sent you a quick response, like a single word response, without really thinking about the negative ways it could be interpreted. And you may also consider having a colleague or a friend or a mentor or your partner read the email, someone removed from the situation, someone who's not going to be impacted by the emotional aspects of it, if possible, and see how they read the email. Now, context is important, so this won't always be effective, but it's another thing you can do to do a reality check to make sure you're not overreacting. And remember, whether somebody was objectively right or wrong is not necessarily the most important factor. If it's something that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, consider moving on and ignoring it. And if you feel that they deserve some kind of comeuppance, that they need to be told off, or that people need to know about their bad behavior, well, rest assured that if they behave like this regularly, they will get their comeuppance eventually. You want to be seen as someone who can rise above, work through conflict, and get things done. And you really only want to reply to these types of emails if there's a work-related reason. And please remember the often overlooked option of just picking up the phone and having a quick chat, walking over to your colleague's desk, or opening up Zoom in these times more likely, and just having a quick chat and clearing the air. More often than not, this is a much better way to solve problems. Now, once you're sure that that email does warrant a response, you need to think critically about what that response ought to be. You need to make sure, in thinking about your response and crafting what you want to say, that you're not reading dynamics into a situation that simply aren't there. So for example, maybe the sender of the offending email has access to information that you don't have, or that the sender hasn't shared with you yet. So for example, maybe you've proposed an expensive project, but the sender's just learned that there's a budget shortfall, and so they're reacting in a negative way to your proposed cost increase. However, maybe they've forgotten in the moment that you didn't know that yet, or they haven't had a chance to share that information with you yet. Try something like this. Thanks for your response.
It seems like we may not be on the same page about something here. Are there considerations that I have not factored in? I'm happy to explore a different approach if I've overlooked something.
They may also have more pressing issues to deal with. When we are focused on our work, our projects, our initiatives, we tend to think of ourselves at the center of the world of what's going on. And this is a natural thing to do as we take on the stress and anxiety of trying to complete our work on time and to do a good job on it. But often our leaders are bogged down by so many other different things. And so our request on the list of the various things that the leadership is dealing with may not be quite as important as we feel it is in the moment. And you may consider resubmitting your request in a way that's easier for them to read.
If, for example, you sent a very text-heavy email initially, you may consider simplifying your requests into an itemized list that's very easy to read. And if necessary, you can refer them back to your original email for additional information, or you can take out specific excerpts for their reference and paste them into your new email.
You may also be misattributing meaning into certain words that just isn't there, and sometimes we can read something as rude, or terse, or dismissive, or short. One-word responses can often be interpreted in a negative way. So for example, if somebody just sent you an email that simply said no, we may respond negatively to that. But it may also be that this individual was just trying to get you the information you needed as quickly as possible. Now, even though we're at the step where we're thinking about how we're going to respond because we've decided we definitely need to respond, it's never too late to decide to just let it go. You should continue to ask yourself whether you really need to respond and whether there's another way you could accomplish what you need to from a work perspective. And I'm going to remind you one more time of something I said earlier. Before you stretch those fingers and start typing, consider picking up the phone, consider walking to your colleague's desk, consider opening up a video chat and quickly clearing the air with them if that's an option. Again, this more often than not is the best way to clear up misunderstandings. And there's always the opportunity to confirm things in writing after if this is a concern. You get so much extra information from hearing people's tone of voice or seeing their face compared to reading words on a screen or on a piece of paper. So consider picking up the phone and saying, "Seems like you might have been upset when you sent this email." You'd be surprised at how often this will solve the issue. And remember, the mere act of putting something in writing can also be misinterpreted in a negative way. When you put things in writing, you may be giving the perception that you're trying to over-formalize a situation or you're trying to cover your butt by putting things in writing. And so this is another situation where we can create miscommunication just by the way we choose to respond rather than the words we actually use. Miscommunication is one of the biggest workplace issues and leads to so much conflict. Now, of course, there's many situations where putting things in writing is a good idea, but think about the work-related reasons for doing that. So for example, one reason might be that you're seeking direction on something complicated and it would be easier to get all of the answers documented one place so that you can refer back to them at a later time. Another reason would be that you find that your interactions with another person, your verbal interactions lead to misunderstandings, and so an easier way to make sure that you're on the same page moving forward would be to make sure that you have that direction of writing. And again, I don't mean that in a covering your butt kind of way. I mean it more to make sure that both parties understand each other and that the written words are on the page to be referred back to by both sides. If the reason for your email is because you have an ongoing relationship with the other party, you need to continue working with them, and it seems like there's friction between you, you should make sure you state that so the other party understands. And in those cases, make sure you actually ask the other party if they have a concern, if they have an issue. You don't want to assume that there's a problem when there isn't one. It's better to ask and to make sure that you're able to both openly communicate any concerns you may have so you can clear them up.
Consider sending a quick note to get back on the same page. Say something like, "I'm not sure if it's just me, but recently it seems like there's been a bit of friction between us. I'm not sure if you feel this way too. If so, it would be great if we could set aside 15 minutes to grab a coffee and clear the air. I've always thought that we've worked well together and I would hate to think that something has changed." If you can, take the opportunity to meet in person or at least over video chat to quickly hash things out, rather than doing everything over email.
If the email that you're responding to that you have a concern with is a very short email or an incomplete email that doesn't respond to all the issues you raised, make sure you highlight this as well. Or think about a different way that you can ask the same question. Maybe you didn't get the response that you were looking for because you weren't clear in your initial email. Maybe your email was too long, too wordy, didn't provide the information required. So take the opportunity to try and reword, to condense, to summarize, or to ask if there was something that the individual was looking for that you didn't provide. Ask them if there's anything you can do to make the process of getting their guidance, their direction easier. You want to write an email that is solutions oriented. You don't want to get caught up in irrelevant details that may exacerbate conflict. Stick to the work-related reason you've decided to respond, and whenever there's negative intention that can be inferred, consider ignoring it and just responding to the core issues. Now this is so important. Read, reread your email. If this is an emotional situation, if this is a situation rife with conflict, you want to make sure that your email is very, very carefully crafted to make sure that it doesn't exacerbate the conflict further. And something you should really consider to avoid an unfortunate accident: don't type your draft response in your email client. Type it in Microsoft Word. Type it in a draft email if you must use your email client, but make sure that sender's email address is not in the to-line. Who knows, you could hit the wrong key on your keyboard and all of a sudden you've sent a heated response that you haven't fully finished, that you haven't fully thought about, that you haven't fully reread. Type the email draft outside of your email client until you're absolutely sure you're ready to hit send. And when you're considering responding to an email, consider also the copy list. A lot of times workplace conflict and miscommunication through email is generated simply by other people who read it. You may feel as though the person tried to embarrass you in front of other colleagues that were copied on the email. Consider removing colleagues from the email, from the copy list if it's an issue between you and one other person. Deal with them one-on-one. Unnecessarily copying people into an email that don't need to be involved can make you seem unprofessional and petty, and can make you seem like you're further escalating the conflict no matter what you write in that response. And similar to my advice earlier, consider having a friend, mentor, colleague, partner reread your email to make sure that it can't be misunderstood, it can't be interpreted in a way that you didn't intend. Now, my advice so far in this video has been more about unprofessional emails, rude emails, emails where there's a misunderstanding, where you don't get the direction or response you were expecting. But I wasn't really talking about emails where there's discrimination or harassment. In a situation like this, my advice to just let it go or have a quick chat with the other person may no longer be appropriate. The purpose of this video is to help you deal with workplace conflict and situations where there may be miscommunication. It's not to advise you on how to proceed in the face of discrimination, harassment, or threats. If you find yourself in this situation, please consider utilizing the workplace resources available to you, whether that's speaking to your manager if they are not the sender of the email, or whether that's speaking to your human resources department or whoever handles your workplace harassment and discrimination complaints. And so that has been my advice on how to handle an email that triggers you emotionally. In almost all situations, firing nasty emails back and forth is going to create way more problems than it's going to solve. At the end of the day, you just have to have perspective, think about whether the conflict is really that big of a deal, think about what else might be going on in the sender's mind and in your mind, and think about whether you need to actually respond, and if you do, make sure it's the right response. In the comments, tell me about some of the most infuriating emails you've ever received and how you handled them. Have you ever used some of the suggestions that I've included in this video? Tell me about your advice for how to handle these situations. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this one. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.